The evidence for an impact is compelling, yet it still leaves one question unresolved. Did it cause a mass extinction? So what extinctions actually occurred at the KT boundary? Well, we know all about the dinosaurs, but marine sediments worldwide appear to show that many species of marine plankton were nearly wiped out, disappearing abruptly right at the boundary. To find out what happened on land, we have to look at fossil plants.
In terms of the different kinds of plants, most plants survive the boundary quite well. What the plants show is that there was a significant ecologic disruption. The palynologists, for example, had shown from the early 1980s that there was what they termed the fern spore spike at the boundary. And this is the sudden increase in abundance of a single kind of fern spore, at least a single kind at a particular locality, where it can go from perhaps less than 10% of all the pollen that a person finds in a sample up to in excess of 90%, almost 100%.
Jack Wolfe believes that fossil plants indicate that the impact winter, as he calls it, lasted for perhaps 3 or 4 weeks. But 2 months after the impact, the ferns have reached their sporing stage again and leave their sign in the fossil record, the so-called fern spore spike.
What the palynologists likened this to was the recovery of devastated vegetation such as occurred at Krakatoa, the great Indonesian volcano that exploded in the last century, or the recovery vegetation on El Chichon in Mexico that blew its top several years ago. And so the ferns provided some evidence, this fern spore spike, of significant ecologic disruption.
Perhaps the greatest scientific debate surrounding the KT impact is whether or not the environmental changes associated with it somehow triggered the mass extinctions of land and marine life, which occurred at the end of the Cretaceous.
The dinosaurs became extinct right at the KT boundary. The smaller ones might have been able to, like lizards and turtles and snakes and crocodiles, could burrow into the mud and survive a short-term insult to the environment, sort of hibernate. Mammals were small rodent-like things that lived in the ground anyway, so they could also escape any atmospheric problems by being underground and surviving until plants reestablish themselves. So the survivors are the ones, I think, that you would predict by the type of catastrophe that the KT impact provided. That is why the large animals like dinosaurs that had to consume a lot of fresh plant material every day couldn't make it, because all this plant material disappeared, died, was burned off, whatever. And once the plant eaters died, the meat eaters died also. It affected the whole food chain.
But so far, there's no consensus among scientists that this is what happened to the dinosaurs. What is certain is that the controversy as to whether such catastrophic events determine major evolutionary change will occupy scientists for many years to come.
What the killing mechanism actually was is still elusive. If the rocks falling out of the sky could produce one extinction pulse, then I think we must expect, if not assume, that other extinction pulses also have been caused by this mechanism. And as Shoemaker has delightfully pointed out, when we realize that rocks do fall out of the sky on a regular basis, this becomes acceptable in the gradualistic framework, because it's part of the Earth's environment, which we accept and understand.